An amazing story about a hopeless fight, 12 against 1, who will win?
Okay, let's dive in. Imagine this. It's a real David versus Goliath story, but playing out in Tel Aviv real estate, we've got one single property owner facing off against 12 others. Oh, and a big developer too.
12 against 1, yeah.
So in these big urban renewal projects, you'd normally expect, well, who usually comes out on top?
Well, usually in these specific types of projects, they call it pinui binui in Hebrew, evacuation construction. Sometimes TAMA38, the law, generally sides with the majority. And the developer, of course.
Right.
The idea is, progress, revitalizing areas, more housing, better infrastructure. The thinking is often that the benefit to the many outweighs the objections of a few.
Makes sense on the surface.
But this case we're digging into today, it really throws a wrench into that whole assumption. Usually these dissenting owners, they can face, legal pressure, even penalties.
To kind of nudge them along.
Exactly, to overcome those objections for what's seen as the community good.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the usual playbook. But like you said, this time it's different. There's this recent district court ruling that it flipped the script completely.
It really did.
Instead of siding with the majority, the court backed the single owner. And get this owner didn't even have an apartment in the building.
That's the fascinating part. It really forces us to look again at how these projects work. So our goal here in this deep dive is to really unpack this legal fight, understand why this case went sideways from the norm, and what it all means.
Let's set the scene then. We're on Kalay Street in Tel Aviv. There's this building. It's slated for one of these big renewal projects.
Right.
And you've got 12 apartment owners all good to go. They've signed on the dotted line with the developer, ready for the new building.
Yeah.
But one owner is holding out.
And as you mentioned, it wasn't like a longtime resident clinging to their home. This was someone who owned an office, a ground floor office space.
An office?
Yeah. So the developer had everyone else, all 12 residents, signed up, but they just couldn't make a deal with this office owner. Negotiations just hit a wall.
Ah, okay. So deadlock. And that's usually when the lawyers get involved, right?
Precisely. The 12 apartment owners, they took legal action. They sued the office owner, basically trying to get the supervisor of real estate involved to break the stalemate.
What were they asking for?
Their proposal was pretty straightforward from their point of view. They said, look, let's get a valuer, figure out what the office is worth in cash.
And the developer pays that amount.
Exactly. Pay the determined value, developer cuts a check, and the project moves forward. Seems simple enough.
And did the supervisor go for it?
Initially, yes. The supervisor of real estate, who often acts kind of like a first step in resolving these disputes, aiming for efficiency, they sided with the majority. They ruled that, the office owner's rights could be expropriated.
Expropriated meaning taken, but with compensation.
Correct. Taken for the project, essentially, with monetary compensation based on whatever the valuation came back at. This seemed, pretty standard for these situations.
But the office owner wasn't having it.
Not at all. He didn't just accept the money, he appealed, took the case up to the district court. And his arguments, they weren't just about the cash.
What was his angle?
He basically said, hold on, you can't just force me out with money, this is my property. He argued, first off, that expropriating his rights wasn't actually permissible here.
Interesting. So not just about the amount, but the principle.
Absolutely. He wasn't just asking for more money. He wanted a unit, a physical space in the new building. He also argued that letting developers just expropriate property to push these projects through, well, it violates the principle of equality between owners.
Equality, meaning everyone should be treated the same, get a new unit or equivalent.
That seems to be the core of it. And he even offered an alternative. He said, okay, if you can't give me a similar office in the new place, then give me a residential apartment of the same value.
Wow, okay. Did he back that up?
He did. He actually submitted his own valuation, claiming his office was worth the equivalent of a 38 square meter apartment in the new building. So he was clearly digging in his heels.
And the district court, what did they make of all this?
This is where it gets really interesting. Judge Lamore Beebe, presiding the district court, she actually sided with the office owner, completely overturned the supervisor's decision.
Whoa, okay. What was her reasoning? You mentioned a quote.
Yes, and it's quite direct. She said, and I'm quoting here, "This involves a proprietary infringement, and providing only monetary compensation in exchange for proprietary rights constitutes a substantial infringement of the apartment owner's rights, which cannot be permitted."
Proprietary infringement. That sounds serious. So taking the property itself, even with money, was the core problem for her.
Exactly. It's a powerful statement about the nature of property rights. So, let's break this down. What's the big takeaway here? Why is this ruling so significant?
Well, for starters, you've got one owner, not even a resident, winning against 12 others and a presumably well-funded developer. That doesn't happen every day.
Definitely not. And what stands out is the court's focus on the fundamental nature of owning property. Judge Beebe's point seems to be that just cutting a check isn't always enough when you're taking someone's actual physical property.
That term she used, proprietary infringement, it really hammers that home. It's not just about financial value.
Right. It suggests that the right to the property itself holds significant weight, and simply offering money doesn't automatically false the infringement. It really pushes back against that common idea we talked about earlier.
Yeah, that the majority rules and the project must go on no matter what.
Exactly. That assumption that expediency and the collective will always trump an individual's property rights. This ruling puts a question mark over that.
So what could this mean for other projects like this down the line? Does this give individual owners, maybe even commercial ones like this guy, more power in negotiations?
It certainly could. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, owners in these situations have a bit more leverage than perhaps they or the developers thought.
Developers might have to work harder to find solutions everyone can live with, rather than just relying on forcing a payout.
Potentially, yes. They might need to be more creative, perhaps offer swaps or other non-monetary solutions, rather than assuming they can just, use the legal process to compel acceptance of cash. It definitely shifts the dynamic a bit.
So the lesson here seems to be persistence can pay off. Don't assume the fight is over just because you're outnumbered.
I think that's fair. It shows that challenging what seems inevitable, even against powerful legal teams focused on speed and minimizing costs, is sometimes worthwhile. The judge's reasoning highlights that these individual property rights have real teeth.
Yeah, it really underscores the complexity of urban development. It's not just about blueprints and buildings. It's about people's rights and finding that balance.
It absolutely is. Considering all the stakeholders, even the minority ones, is crucial.
So, to wrap up, a small office owner stands their ground against 12 neighbors, a big developer, overcomes an initial ruling, and wins. It's quite the story.
It really is.
And it definitely makes you think, doesn't it, about that balance between, the greater good of a project and the fundamental rights of an individual property owner.
Exactly. Where do you draw the line? It's a tough question.
And it kind of leaves you wondering what other situations that seem like a done deal, totally insurmountable, might actually turn out differently if someone is just willing to stand firm and push back.
It's a good thought to ponder. It definitely shines a light on the power dynamics at play in real estate, in law, really, in many areas.
Definitely food for thought. So if this deep dive into property law, real estate battles, and this really compelling human story caught your interest, maybe dig a little deeper into urban renewal laws or look up some similar cases. There's always more layers to uncover.